Welcome, everybody, back to the Friar Talk podcast and YouTube channel. So I am here today with Isaac. We didn't get any videos out earlier this week. Just been kind of crazy with traveling around the holidays for all of us. Chase is not going to be here this week. He should be here on Sunday when we do our live stream Sunday morning at 9. But we're going to have episodes out today, tomorrow, and then on Saturday as well. Now, tomorrow's episode, it's New Year's. We're going through these trades. And for this episode, we're going to be talking about the 2015 offseason through the 2016 season. And then tomorrow, we're going to do the 2016 offseason through the 2017 season. There's only 4 trades that year. So it's going to be a very quick video tomorrow. Obviously, it's a holiday, but we wanted to get something out just because we haven't got much out this week. We are expecting to finish up these top 10s because that's going to be one of our Saturday video is going to be third base top 10. And then we're probably going to finish up this trade series and then also our top 10 series. If not next week, then the week after. And then we'll probably start getting back into like a lot of Padres content. Hopefully there's some updates by that time on what this season's going to look like, because I know early January is like kind of a target time to figure out what's going to, the next steps of this lockout. So hopefully we have some stuff, and then hopefully, we get some Padres content, because there's not much stuff going on right now for the Padres. That's why we've been doing this kind of like going and looking back at AJ Preller's trade history. But for this one, we're going to talk about the 2015 offseason through the 2016 season. So let's get into it right now. I'm going to go through, read all the trades off, and then in the comments or the description, it's going to look like just like all of them laid out. So if you want to go through and check it as we're going on, there's some stats and stuff like added to the name, so you can kind of see, okay, this guy was pretty good once we'd moved him, or he didn't really do anything after we moved him. It just kind of gives you a better way to like judge the guys. And then I'm going to let Isaac talk about like the main ones, and then we'll go back and forth on some of these, because there is a pretty big trade in this year right here. So starting out, Jose Preller gets traded for Ronald Herrera. Preller was acquired from the Yankees in that one. Then we acquire Enel De Los Santos and Nelson Ward from Joaquin Benoit. You guys remember him? He played for San Diego for a while. And then he had a decent time with Seattle. Not very good numbers, but he was definitely better early on in his career. The 2 guys the Padres acquired never played for the Padres, so not a big trade there. This next trade was definitely a pretty huge trade at the time. Manny Margot, Javi Guerra, Carlos Asuaje, and Logan Allen for Craig Kimbrell. And it's gonna be weird. We're gonna discuss this one a lot more. But at the time, you're trading one of the best closers in the game. You get 4 guys back, and now, as we know, none of these guys panned out for the Padres. Kimbrell's still a great closer in the game, but if you look at the numbers, it's not like it's not one that's like a huge loss. So it's a little bit interesting, but don't think that you would make that trade again if you go back. Not like it didn't make sense to trade Kimbrell away, but I don't know. It's definitely an iffy one there, just because you didn't really get anything out of it. After that, we got Drew Pomeranz. This was when he came over to be a starter. He was great as a starter. Also got Jose Torres, Jabari Blash, tons of hype around him. And we traded the Athletics, Yonder Alonso, and Mark Repkinski. I think that's how you say it. After that, we acquired John Jay for Jed Jerko. 2 guys that are pretty known. And also it's kind of funny because they're both more known for being Cardinals. So maybe that kind of lets you know on how that trade worked out. Then we go on, Luis Perdomo from the Rockies for cash considerations, or a player to be named later. Perdomo ended up pitching over 400 innings for the Padres. Did not put up good numbers. Was always a guy they were kind of like trying to get something out of. Never really panned out. He's on the Brewers now. Next trade, Christian Bethancourt for Casey Kelly and Ricardo Rodriguez. Not much went on with this trade. Trevor Seidenberg got traded from the Brewers for Reimer Liriano. These guys never played for either of the teams that they were acquired by. Next trade, we acquired Gene Cosme from the Orioles for Despaigne. Remember Despaigne playing for a while, but another move that nothing really happened for either of these teams. Next move, Dan Straley to the Astros, or from the Astros for Eric Kratz. Straley never played for the Padres. Kratz only played 14 games for the Astros. So that was all of the offseason through the 2015 and 2016 offseason. Nothing crazy. I think there's a couple ones that we're going to go back to once I turn it back over to Isaac. 2016 season. First trade in 2016 season, one that we might end up remembering a decent amount. the Eric Johnson trade for James Shields, and then Fernando Tatis was a part of that one as well. So an interesting one there. That one, obviously, it's the highlight of all of these trades that we're evaluating. So that's the big winner right there. We're going to get more into this. So I'll let Isaac talk a little bit more about that. Chris Paddock after that for Fernando Rodney. Another trade where, hey, maybe Chris Paddock hasn't panned out exactly how he wanted him to, but you were trading away a closer on a team that wasn't very good. It definitely made sense. Definitely going to talk about this one a lot because verdict's still out on Chris Paddock, and we haven't really talked about Chris Paddock in a while, but during the season, he was probably the guy we talked about most because in live streams, everyone really wanted to hear about Chris Paddock consistently. After that, we acquired Anderson Espinoza for Drew Pomeranz, coming off that really good starting year. And this time, this was when Espinoza was talked about like, oh, is he going to be Pedro Martinez? Injuries completely derail his career. Ends up being traded for Jake Marisnick last year. Never pitched in the majors for the Padres, unfortunately, but has definitely been showing some signs of improving and won't be for the Padres, but it looks like he might end up having an MLB career, which I think for him, that's probably just a big win in general with all the injuries that he had. Hansel Rodriguez for Melvin Upton Jr. Upton had 165 plate appearances in that second half of the season. They never played again after that. Rodriguez never pitched for the Padres. Trade after that, Josh Naylor, Luis Castillo, Jared Cozart, and Carter Capps from the Marlins for Andrew Kashner, Colin Ray, and Tayron Guerrero. Big thing with this one, Luis Castillo ends up not becoming a Padre. Colin Ray does not become a Marlin because of some injury issues where Colin Ray was getting Tommy John, and basically the Padres didn't disclose all the information. So this trade ends up falling through. And you definitely wish that you didn't have Colin Ray in this one. You'd rather have Luis Castillo, because even though Luis Castillo, he's one of those guys that gets super hot, but when he's on, he is really on, and he's really had a great career as well. So kind of sucks that you missed out on him, but that first trade was right. Just didn't end up going through. After that, Hector Oliveira for Matt Kemp. Oliveira never pitched for the Padres. Matt Kemp went on to play with the Braves. 171 games, 278 average, 805 OPS, 31 home runs. And I think he went to the Dodgers after that. I don't know. He ended up having a resurgence, though, and it didn't really work out for the Padres. But that was more about cutting costs than anything at the time, so not going to knock the Padres a ton for that one. And then the final trade this year, acquired Luis Sardinas from the Mariners for cash, or a player to be named later. He had 173 plate appearances on the Padres. Not much there. But, Isaac, you're looking at all these trades. I went through a lot of them. Anyone listening, probably took a while, but kind of get the gist of these trades. Isaac, what are the big ones that stand out to you? And we'll definitely talk about Fernando because that's obviously the biggest of the bunch.
Well, the first one that stands out to me and the one that I remember the most was that Manny Margot, Javi Guerra, I think it was Carlos Asuaje, and I forgot the other name, but it was for Craig Kimbrell. Now, I know you said, going back on it, maybe we shouldn't have done it. I still think, it was all right, just because I think you mentioned how we traded a closer. We weren't a team that really needed a good closer considering we weren't winning many games. It was one of either Manny Margot or Javi Guerra that was either their top prospect or a top 5 prospect, maybe even both of them. There was a lot of hype surrounding them. Obviously, Margot ended up not being very valuable at the plate, but on the field, he was a solid glove, very good center fielder. Unfortunately, just, not good enough for a team in a rebuilding scenario. Javi Guerra ended up becoming a relief pitcher. Feel like you can kind of credit that him maybe not being the best shortstop or the best hitter, and Fernando ended up being a superstar. But I don't know. Is he still with us? I don't think he is anymore, right? He got DFA'd?
He got DFA'd, yeah.
Yeah, so he got DFA'd. Asuaje wasn't very good. What was the last name? Let me check real quick. The last name was
Logan Allen.
Logan Allen. Okay, let me tell you guys about Logan Allen. If you remember Logan Allen for any other reason than John Cena showing up to the games because of Logan Allen, then I'm very surprised, because that's the only reason I remember Logan Allen. Yeah, but he wasn't very good for the Padres either. I only remember his first start. But another one, let me go back and check the paper. That was kind of the one that stood out just because that was the big one. Another one being the Drew Pomeranz trade, where we acquired Drew Pomeranz. For anyone that didn't know, Drew Pomeranz was a starter for us, and he was a very valuable starter for us. Pitched 17 games, 102 innings pitched, 2.47 ERA with 1.059 WHIP. So He was a fantastic starting pitcher for us. Ended up becoming a trade piece. But also in that trade came Jose Torres, who pitched 66 games, 71 innings pitched, 4.04 ERA. And, if you remember correctly, Jabari Blash, one of the more hyped up players that I can remember for the Padres. He ended up playing in 99 games, 200 average, 659 OPS, and a 78 OPS plus. So the hype was not very, he didn't deserve the hype. He was pretty bad. I remember him being pretty bad also, and I remember being pretty hyped about him. But the big piece, Drew Pomeranz, ended up being great. So overall, I thought it was a pretty good trade. We lost Yonder Alonso. He ended up playing 256 games for Oakland, 258 average, 29 home runs. And then, I don't know how to say this name, guys. Mark Chepsinski, I'm not even going to try again. 56 games, 3 ERA. So, I mean, that's a 3 ERA. That's the complete outlier of his career because he had a 1.722 WHIP that year. But, that's a pretty good trade. I thought Pomeranz was very valuable for us. Let me check out the other trades because that's the only trade that I can really remember of the offseason that ended up being, noteworthy. Obviously, there's John Jay for Jed Yorko, but didn't really get much out of either of them. Now let's talk about, obviously, the big one, Fernando. Pretty much here's how history went down with that trade. Fernando ended up becoming a superstar. James Shields ended up becoming a Padres legend because of that trade. And I don't know who Eric Johnson is. So that's how everything went down. Fernando is looking like he's going to end up becoming one of, if not the best Padre to ever play. I know it might sound premature, but guys, he looks fantastic. He looks like he could lead us to multiple playoff appearances, barring performance from all the other players. James Shields, I don't really remember what he did with the White Sox. Let me go ahead and check. 436 innings pitched, 5.3 ERA, so nothing really noteworthy. But if we're going to talk about stats for Fernando, 3.6 career WAR and only 1,000 at-bats. Slash line 292, 369, 965 with already 81 home runs, 195 ribbies, and 52 stolen bases. Fantastic, incredible. So James Shields will always be remembered in our hearts for that trade. Another one, pretty good trade, I thought. Looking back at it right now, I think it's a really good trade, especially because if you've been listening for a while, I am a Chris Paddock fan, and Fernando Rodney wasn't needed by the Padres. Of course, like Matt said, jury is still out on Chris Paddock, but for anyone who watched his rookie year, he looked really good for a solid stretch until the league started figuring him out a little bit. It's easy to get figured out when you don't throw many pitches. Really rough 2020. I think rough is kind of an understatement, but in 2021 did not start off very well. But he was starting to hold his ground. I thought he started to look really, really good when he implemented that curveball. So, with all that being said, I think it's a really good trade. Jury's still out on Chris Paddock. I think it will still end up being a really solid trade. And then there was one more that I saw that I can remember, the Luis Castillo one. All I can really say about it is that sucks. That's it, really. That just sucks. Colin Ray, we could have had Luis Castillo. Unfortunately, only ended up with Josh Naylor. And for anyone who knows Josh Naylor, you probably don't remember him as that bad of a player. I don't remember him as that bad of a player, but stats kind of tell a different story. I still don't think he was that bad. But yeah, it sucks that we couldn't have Luis Castillo. We had to deal with Colin Ray instead and didn't get much out of Colin Ray. Let me just look at his numbers in San Diego. Colin Ray with San Diego, 25 games, 4.81 ERA, 131 innings pitched, nothing noteworthy. It's not Luis Castillo.
Yeah, so I think that I'll go backwards. I think that's the one that just is so weird because it fell through, and if you would have had that trade, if you would have acquired Luis Castillo, we talked about this in the Max Fried deal, looking back, and of course hindsight's 2020 in these, but you look back and you go, damn, that's the guy you would have wanted last year when all those pitchers started going down. But wasn't the case. Still, overall, through all these trades, I think you have to give the Padres an A+. Not because you go through and you're like, dang, they're going through and they're nailing all these trades. I mean, you look through them, a lot of these trades were acquiring guys like Jose Preller, Carlos Asuaje, guys that were just placeholders to kind of play when the Padres weren't very good. A lot of the names I said too, are probably going to be familiar to a lot of listeners, even if you haven't been watching the Padres for a long time, because they played like 3 years ago, 4 years ago, and they were everyday players for a season, half a season, whatever it was. They got an opportunity. A lot of them didn't do that much like crazy things, but the Padres went out and they tried to acquire a bunch of mid-tier talent. And in doing that, they land a superstar, generational level player in Fernando Tatis in one of those deals, where they're basically dumping James Shield to try to dump some of his salary. They get Fernando Tatis, and that is something that is just insane. You look at like where the Padres organization is now. Without Fernando, it's going to look a lot different. You're probably not going to have Machado coming over here. You're probably not going to have, the ownership really buy into winning like they are. So that's the pivotal move. That's the pivotal move that completely changed the Padres organization. So I think you have to give them an A+. These other moves, they're kind of a wash. You brought up Chris Paddock. I think the big thing with Chris Paddock is how is he going to look with Niebla? Is that going to be something where, because I felt like last year, okay, his fastball velocity got back up because in 2020, that was the issue, right? Couldn't throw his fastball super straight, no velocity. Okay, he got a little bit more consistent last year. Changeup fell behind, curveball develops. Can you get all those 3 pitches working at once? If you can, I think Chris Paddock is a really good back-end starter. I think he's a great guy to have as a 4 or 5 starter. And I think that, kind of the narrative of like, oh, Chris Paddock's awful will change a little bit. He's young. He's still developing. He's playing on it. Last year, he was playing on a team that had a lot of high expectations. So he didn't perform well. He got criticized for it. I think that's fair. However, you need to see him take a jump. And if he can, I think it's going to be a little bit different when we look back on that trade. But only time is going to tell with that Chris Paddock trade. You brought up, who was it? Oh, Josh Naylor in the Luis Castillo deal too. Josh Naylor, I feel like he's another guy, verdict's out on him. He got a really bad, I think it was a leg break. It was like a really gruesome injury last season. And his numbers don't look very good, but me and Isaac were talking about it. He always felt like someone that would come up clutch, and he always felt like he had the hitting tools to be successful. So he's a guy that, like, I'm always going to root for, for Josh Naylor because he was a Potter for a little bit, and we weren't, like, super big fans of when they traded him. Hopefully he comes around or not the Indians, actually, I'm sorry, the Guardians. Hopefully he comes around for the Guardians, but, kind of still waiting to see what's up with him. But the numbers don't show, like, some spectacular play or anything. And for the Padres, he didn't do anything crazy, but, another one of those moves you go and you try to land a star. Drew Pomeranz, that was a great trade. Now, it really just hurts, I think, in this one that when you look back on it, it's like, okay, you got Anderson Espinoza, didn't turn into anything. Not Anderson Espinoza's fault. It really sucks for him because his career got completely derailed by multiple elbow injuries. He didn't pitch for like 4 years, but wish him the best now that he's a Cub. Unfortunately, they did trade him this last trade deadline. And then the last trade I will bring up, Manny Margot, Javi Guerra, Carlos Asuaje, Logan Allen for Craig Kimbrell. I don't think this is like, because I was saying, like, it's not like this one's like, oh man, like, yeah, they added Tatis, but oh, they lost Craig Kimbrell. No, it's not like that. It's like, hey, it's all right. It's not the biggest deal in the world. Yes, you probably took a loss on this one just because you acquired 4 players and you're trying to get one of them to be a big hit. Manny Margot, Javi Guerra, they're amazing defensive players, right? That's how they came out. Couldn't never pick it up with the bat. It never really worked out. So kind of a wash, though. You look at these, okay, I like it. Things like a plus for Paddock, maybe a minus on that deal, a plus on the Pomeranz deal, and then everything on the Fernando Tatis deal. So overall, I'm giving him an A+. This season completely changed the Padres' fortune. And yeah, you go through all the trades and it doesn't really look like much, but there is one trade that did it. And when you have one trade of that caliber that completely changes your guy's direction, that's a plus from me. So Isaac, what's your grade on this trade trade season?
I think I'm gonna give him an A. There was nobody that I can really think of off the top of my head where, like, like in the past video that we did, we lost Max Fried and Trey Turner. There's no one in this one where I'm like, damn, we lost that guy, So overall, and you made a franchise-altering move when you acquired Fernando. So, without Fernando, who knows where the Padres are headed? Who knows if all these, fans came out of nowhere, fans? Who knows what happens here? But, he definitely changed the direction of the Padres. I think, when you look at the year that he came up, Manny, Ian Kinsler, and I forgot the other person were saying, like, don't leave him down anymore, bring him up. And that day is when, people, I don't really think it was till like 2020 because he was injury riddled in 2019. But 2020 was when people thought, damn, Fernando's a superstar. Because 2019, you started to hear his name. And we're, Padres fans are the ones that knew, like, this guy's going to be a superstar. And 2020 is when he really popped off. And that's not to discredit his rookie year, because if he would have stayed healthy, he was easily rookie of the year, if not an MVP level player. But that trade is going to go down as maybe the best in Padres history. Maybe even going to be better than that Ken Caminetti and Steve Finley trade that, everyone loves. But other than that, I still think Chris Paddock's going to be great. Like you said, it's going to depend on how he does with Niebla. I think it's not only being able to pitch those 3 pitches consistently for strikes and it's going to be more about, can his fastball velocity stay constant? I think the games where we see him get rocked are the games where he's throwing 92 or 93. And it's not like 1 or 2 pitches. It's consistent, 92, 93. The games where he does good are 97, 98, 96 every once in a while. So when he's pumping his fastball, he looks good. Now, I'm not trying to discredit that, his changeup and curveball do need to look really good as well. But, there's a game specifically where he was throwing 92 or 93 against the Dodgers, and I don't even want to think of that game. So, that one didn't look good. But if he's able to, find consistency in his velocity and his stuff, he's going to be really good. Now, we also don't know what's up with his arm, but, only time will tell with that. Drew Pomeranz, I thought that was a fantastic deal, acquiring him and trading him away. I thought both were really good. Like you said, not Espinosa's fault. For anyone, that remembers, he was our number 1 prospect at I forgot what season, but it was him, Paddock, and Lamet. They were all top 10 prospects, with him being number 1. So injuries just kind of derailed his career, unfortunately. Not on a, it's not on a talent level that we lost that trade. But really good year for AJ Preller, for sure.
Yeah, so I think that's going to do it for today's episode. Tomorrow, we're going to be doing the, 2016 offseason through the 2017 season. Yeah. Very, very quick deal. Very, very quick one. It's not going to take too long, but that's going to do it for today's episode. So thank you all for listening, and we'll be back talking Padres baseball, talking these AJ Preller trades tomorrow.